Good evening, everybody, and welcome to today's session of Roznama, the daily newspaper analysis. Today is the 15th of April, and without wasting any further time, we'll quickly jump on to the first one. This particular piece of news has been doing the rounds for quite some time now because it has certain other things like inclusive of certain other topics like delimitation that you have to keep in mind. Then talks about census, then talks about the women reservation bill. All right, so all of this is inclusive, is included in this particular news piece. All right, okay. Now to facilitate the inclusion of the women reservation, the government had till now tentatively proposed that the government seeks to increase the present 550 seats of the Lok Sabha, which had 530 seats for states and 20 seats for the union territories. It proposed to increase this to a total of 816. All right. However, yesterday the government has put forth the actual bill which seeks to bring about the proposed changes. So the bill now proposes an increase of the total number of Lok Sabha seats to 850. All right. So now this 850 seats would be inclusive of implementation of the Women Reservation Act. Now, this particular Women Reservation Act was supposed to be implemented to reserve 1/3 of the total number of seats of the Lok Sabha for women at the center, as well as 1/3 of the total seats for women in the legislative assemblies. All right. This the government seeks to do before the next election, that is the election of the 2029 cycle. All right. Now, to do this, the government has to undertake delimitation, that is aligning of territorial constituencies. Okay. Now, this alignment of territorial constituencies is done on the basis of population. So, the ratio that they've set is 1 MP is to 10.11 lakh people. This would be changed now because the total number of seats now have been increased to 850. All right. Other than that, in this particular bill, there are certain other changes that they've put forth. All right. Previously, since the 1976 amendment, they had said that delimitation has to be undertaken after every census. That they have mandatorily put to an end. That they're saying that it is not a compulsion to undertake delimitation after every census. And the second thing that they've changed is that this particular provision of undertaking proportional representation has to be on the basis of population, and it was a set definition that how this delimitation is going to be undertaken. This the government has removed in the sense that the basis would be decided by the parliament now. All right, so basically that they are giving more rights to the parliament to undertake the entire change in the seats as well as territorial constituency. All right, then this has naturally been opposed by the opposition members and also certain people, certain parties of South India as well. Okay, so the same piece of article continued elsewhere, which also talks about the provisions of Article 170. Article 170 calls for delimitation of seats for state assemblies. All right. So now, with respect to delimitation, there are three basic articles that you have to keep in mind. One is Article 81, then is Article 82, then is Article 170. All right. Article 81, what does it do? It freezes the maximum number of Lok Sabha seats to 550. All right. Article 82 calls for delimitation or realignment of Lok Sabha seats, delimitation for Lok Sabha. Article 170 is delimitation for the state legislative assemblies. All right. All right. Then this article tells us that the present freeze on the total number of seats were actually, that is this 550 was actually brought into existence through the 42nd Constitution Amendment Act of 1976. Then it was further reiterated that this freeze, in 1976, they said that this freeze would continue till 2001. Then in 2003, we had the 84th Constitution Amendment Act, and this said that the freeze, that is this same freeze frozen in 1976, would continue till 2026, and this delimitation was to be undertaken on the basis of 2021 census. Now, however, we did not have the 2021 census because of COVID. The 2021 census is now going to be undertaken in 2026, all right? And then after we get the census data in 2025, 2027, a new delimitation commission would be set up in 2028 to undertake the delimitation of territorial constituencies in 2029. Now, the government is feeling that it would possibly be very late to, undertake delimitation in 2028 for 2029 elections. So they've begun the entire process. They're trying to begin the entire process as of now based on the 2011 census data. This again is being opposed by the opposition parties. All right. So do go through this article as well. Then coming to the next article is again with respect to interstate distribution of Lok Sabha seats, which would be undertaken on the basis of 2011 census. Interstate meaning between different states. Now, I told you all in the beginning of today's session that the distribution takes place on the basis of population. All right. Now, if we look at population, the population in recent years, more purposefully since 1975, has been undertaken, and various measures have been undertaken in the country to bring about population control. More rigidly, these measures have been undertaken in southern states. All right. These measures have been undertaken in the southern states. Effectively undertaken in the southern states. Population control measures have been undertaken in the northern states as well as the southern states. They have been effective in southern states, meaning that the population has reduced in southern states, and in northern states we've seen a population increase. And when you look at the basis for undertaking alignment allocation of seats, it is undertaken on the basis of population. So naturally, if we look at the 2011 census, the states in northern India would have higher population, therefore they are more liable to get more number of seats in the Lok Sabha than the states, than the southern Indian states. All right. So that is what they are opposing in different states. All right. Okay. Then the next is on Nitish Kumar. So Nitish Kumar stepped down as the chief minister day before yesterday. And today we had the new chief minister instated in Bihar. All right. So Samrat is the new chief minister who has been instated. And the significance of Samrat being instated as the new chief minister of Bihar is that he is probably the first BJP chief minister in Bihar. Now, Nitish Kumar has been the longest serving chief minister of Bihar. He took oaths for 10 times being, chosen as the chief minister of Bihar. 10 oaths and a total duration of 20 years. All right. So that is a significant term. Now, this term and era has come to an end, and he has been elected as the member of the Rajya Sabha. Now we have Article 101 of the Constitution, which is read along with Representation of the People's Act 1950. This Article 101 of the Constitution plus Representation of People's Act 1950 basically provides that one particular person can't be a member of both the Legislative Assembly of the state and the Parliament. So he has to vacate either of his seats within 14 days. And if he does not, then the one in the Parliament is going to be vacated automatically. All right. So he has resigned. He resigned as an MLA of Bihar just a few days back after he got elected to the Rajya Sabha. Then he also now resigned as the chief minister, and a new chief minister has been reinstated. All right. So he has now Samrat Chaudhary is set to become the new chief minister, and he is probably going to be the first BJP chief minister of the state. And he was the deputy chief minister. Now he's been promoted to the chief minister of Bihar. Then this article is on Lebanon and Israel finally undertaking direct talks. So this is also pretty significant because we did see that in this present war between US and Iran, after the assassination of Ayatollah, who was a Shiite cleric leader, and the militant group of Lebanon, that is Hezbollah, it also includes of a large number of people who belong to the Shia community in Islam. So they considered Ayatollah as their leader, and because he was assassinated, they retaliated by undertaking an attack on Israel. All right. This attack was again countered by Israel, and Israel's attack resulted in massive loss of life for the Lebanese people. All right. Now, Hezbollah is a militant group in Lebanon. Other than the militant group, Hezbollah also Lebanon also has an elected government. All right. Now, the Lebanese government is supposedly going to break ties with Hezbollah, and also Lebanon and Israel are going to undertake direct talks, finally maybe bringing to a conclusive end, or at least bringing a ceasefire among themselves after these direct talks, which was much needed. We did see that a ceasefire was declared between Iran and US for a 2-week period. No such ceasefire was declared between Israel and Lebanon. Israel did continue to undertake attacks, which resulted in massive loss of life for Lebanon. All right, so this is a pretty significant step. Do keep it in mind. And if you look at the history of Hezbollah, just keep in mind that Hezbollah as a militant group was established in 1982. All right, then 6 ships have been turned around as part of Hormuz blockade. So when talks, the first round of talks between Iran and USA failed, which were brokered by Pakistan, then US declared that US is going to undertake blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, all right, which was actually mocked by Iran, and they issued a statement like the Strait of Hormuz does not belong to US to blockade. However, the US military has deployed its ships there, and they have undertaken a almost successful step to bring about blocking of the Strait of Hormuz. All right. Then we did see yesterday that the Prime Minister of India had a phone call with the US President, and both of them have undertaken discussions on the opening of the Strait of Hormuz, and naturally to bring to an end this particular war, employing or deploying this peaceful dialogue diplomacy. India's vested interest is basically to not bring to any end its entire energy supply that India is majorly dependent upon the Strait of Hormuz for. All right. So the talk basically lasted, the phone call basically lasted for 40 minutes. All right. And this was what they had basically discussed. And also, US has proposed to call for a 20-year freeze on Iranian nuclear ambitions or Iran's nuclear program. Iran, on the other hand, has called for a 5-year freeze, and now they're basically headed for the second round of talks. All right. Then the same thing with respect to this, what happened was that Donald Trump had issued pretty vexing statements against the Pope of Italy, and Pope is considered as the religious head of the Catholic Christians, and he is based in the Vatican in Italy. So the Italian leader, that is Meloni Georgina, she did come up and she criticized Donald Trump's statement that he had criticized the Pope. To which Donald Trump said that he actually considered Meloni to be one of the good leaders, and one of those leaders who could actually bring about a change in the entire global world order. So he's apparently very shocked at the Italian leader's condemnation of Trump's statements. And also, just with this, do remember that a few days back, when the war actually began, then Donald Trump had called for assistance from the NATO allies. So Italy is one of the NATO members, but Italy did not permit Donald Trump to use the military and naval bases in Italy to undertake the counterattack on Iran. All right. So since then, we did see a downfall between Italy And USA, also Spain undertook a similar decision. None of the NATO countries, they actually permitted USA to use their military bases to undertake attacks on Iran. So naturally, if you don't go as per the wishes of the United States of America, it does not go down well with the United States of America. So Donald Trump also had undertaken or made an announcement going to the extent that USA is thinking of withdrawing from the NATO, right? Which naturally he cannot do unilaterally. They need permission, and entire act has to be passed and amended through the Congress, that is the Parliament of the United States of America. Okay. All right. Then efforts are underway for second set of US-Iran talks, because the first one failed, and they're still on the negotiating. They still want to come up on the negotiating tables. All right. Okay. If China has also issued a statement for the first time and has said that this US blocking the Strait of Hormuz is very dangerous, which US should not do, and US must recognize the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Iran, and also must consider that how the Strait of Hormuz is actually one major reason or one major point of contention which could actually disrupt the entire global order. Why? Because mostly, 75% of the global world order is dependent on West Asian oil. So blockading this is going to disrupt the entire, it is actually disrupting, but it is going to further aid this. Okay. All right. Then West Asia war threatens to push 2.5 million people into poverty. This has been a report that has been released by United Nations Development Program. UNDP is that program which releases many indices like the Human Development Index, Multidimensional Poverty Index, Happiness Index. So all of these in collaboration with other organizations also like Oxford Peace Institute. UNDP has basically issued a statement through a report. The title of the report is Military Escalation in the Middle East, Human Development Impacts Across Asia and the Pacific. All right. So it is in this report that they've actually said that this entire war is going to push 2.5 million people into poverty. Whatever efforts that UNDP and other organizations have actually undertaken to rule out, to curb multidimensional poverty and other levels and other types of poverty is actually going to the bin if the war does not come to an end. Okay. All right. Then this particular article is on Manrega. All right. Why did I take it up? Because I just wanted to flag Manrega and VB Ramji for you all. All right. Now, the government does bring about a hike in the wages that they provide under Manrega. But this time, the hike has been halted as of now. Why? Because the central government is seeking to roll out VB Ramji. All right. So VB Ramji is an amendment, is a change on Manrega. Firstly, please do remember the full forms. Manrega stands for Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, brought in 2005. VB Ramji Viksit Bharat Gramin Gramin नहीं Viksit Bharat Guarantee for Rozgar Evam Ajivika Mission Gramin. This was proposed last year in 2025, has been passed, and there are certain changes to it. For example, in Manrega and VB Ramji. Now, Manrega sought to give employment in rural areas for 100 days. This seeks to give employment for 150 days. 100 days, and this seeks to give employment for 125 days. This particular scheme was absolutely centrally funded in the sense that it was a central sector scheme. This, however, is a centrally sponsored scheme that expenses are going to be borne equally between the central government and not equally in the format of a central sector scheme between the central government and the state governments. All right. So what is this format? 60:40 between other states and 90:10 between the central government and the northeastern states and Himalayan states. All right. Then another thing, that this was a demand driven program in the sense as and how many people they enroll themselves to be to work under the Manrega program. depending on the people, the number of people who are registering themselves, budgetary allocations are made. However, now in this, it is going to be a budget capped scheme, all right, that every year they are going to align one conclusive amount to be distributed under BBG Ramji. All right. Then another, that this particular program makes a provision for agricultural pause. All right, an agricultural pause for 60 days in between the sowing, for the sowing and harvesting season for the rural areas. All right. So this is the major change that the program is undertaking. All right. So do keep it in mind. It is pretty important, and you also get it in the article as well. All right. Then coming to the editorials for today. The first one is on, again, US and Iran. So I can go through this particular article. This article gives us an insight as to what are the basic issues that have been raised by the United States of America to bring about a conclusive end to the war. So what are the three basic issues? The three basic issues that US president has actually put forth in front of Iran to conclude peace talks. One is Iran's highly enriched uranium. It should come to an end. It should be limited. And also the nuclear program must be halted for the next 20 years. Then the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz and the Israel's war in Lebanon. So this is what they've been talking about. Enriched uranium, the reports undertaken, submitted by International Atomic Energy Agency, basically suggests that Iran has about 400 kgs of enriched uranium and up to 60%, which is enough to make around 10 to 12 nuclear bombs. So this is what was the main reason that was cited by the United States of America as threatening to USA's internal and national security. All right, so the article just takes you through JCPOA, takes you through International Atomic Energy Agency, takes you through the various agreements that were signed under JCPOA, etc. All right, so do go through this article, gives you a good insight. Then the next article is on now that Bihar has finally going to have the first BJP chief minister. So how is BJP now, what should BJP actually do to establish a strong footing in Bihar? So this is what the article gives you an insight about. Then this particular article draws our attention to the fact that this year we are going to have meet with South Korea, and both the countries, India and South Korea, they must undertake maybe concerted efforts to at least bring about energy security for themselves and also other countries who are in the Southeast Asian region, all right, to reduce their dependence on the Strait of Hormuz for their energy supplies, all right. Then again, this particular article is a take on the women reservation bill. Why is it necessary? And if the amount of seats that they are actually increasing from 550 to directly 850 could maybe create a lot of ruckus and hinder effective democracy in the country. All right. Then this particular article is on the Jan Vishwas Act that the government has proposed, and this act proposes to amend 784 provisions across 79 central laws. All right, so it is seeking to decriminalize certain outdated and redundant offenses, general contraventions, and undertakes decriminalization of things like civil mechanisms, warnings, monetary penalties, etc. It outlines the procedural defaults that are to be undertaken, talks about compounding, rationalization, omissions, etc. So I can go through this one. Then again, this article is on women reservation, the provisions to undertake it, the census that they've decided to undertake, the freeze that was brought in through the 42nd Constitution Amendment Act of 1978, 1976, then further reiterated through the 84th Constitution Amendment Act, finally implementing after the supposedly data received by the census, when the census exercise concludes in 2027. and then a new delimitation commission is supposed to be set up to undertake this. Then it also gives you data as to how, which states, that is the southern states basically, who are going to lose out to their seats as compared to the northern states who are going to get an increased share there. So a basic asymmetry in the house could be created. Then yesterday we had one article on Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, and in yesterday's article we did talk about his entire ideation of leading the revolutionary movement. This is a continuation of the same article. It is a part 2 of the same article, and this article basically tells us that how he did not basically differentiate between whatever means that anybody is employing or deploying to finally achieve one concerted end goal, right? Now, to achieve that end goal, he did not differentiate basically between fascism, did not differentiate between totalitarianism, and he said that major good pointers of all of these sources, all of these governments, for example, Hitler in Germany, General, the General of Japan, their entire ideation could actually be used and deployed to gain independence from the British. All right. So this is a good article on him. So I can go through it. Then quickly coming to the news in brief. Now, Mark Carney, he has won 3 special seats in 3 different regions of Canada, 3 different districts of Canada, which were vacant, and winning these 3 districts has increased his parties, the Liberal Party's seats in the Parliament, in the House of Commons, to 174, which has now, out of 343, which has now given him a clear-cut majority, which they are now saying that because he has a majority in the House, now he can actually undertake certain changes in the entire governmental structure of Canada without requiring the help of the opposition members. All right. Mark Carney is the Prime Minister of Canada, and this year he was pretty much in news because of his speech of in Davos summit of World Economic Forum that took place in January, and his entire speech was reiterated and interpreted as the Carney Doctrine. All right. He also visited India in a bilateral summit meeting. Okay. Then the Prime Minister has launched a new e-way linking Delhi and Dehradun. So it is a new expressway that they have launched and established, undertaken, and this will reduce the travel time between the 2 cities from 5 to 6 hours to about 2 hours to 2.5 hours. All right, and along with undertaking this expressway, they've also given effective consideration to establishment of a green corridor. What is this green corridor? Green corridors have been established to facilitate easy movement of wildlife in these regions. All right. Then the next one is that the US is to allow waiver on Iran oil to expire. So whatever waiver was imposed on Iranian oil, which was that they couldn't, undertake supply of Iranian oil to other countries, is supposed to be waived for 30 days. All right. Okay. Then Italy pauses defense cooperation with Israel. Now, Italy had signed a defense cooperation agreement with Israel, but in the present crisis, especially after the entire fallout between the Italian Prime Minister and the US President, she's further paused the defense cooperation with Israel. All right. Then this I just wanted to flag because Leonardo da Vinci was born on 15th of April. So 15th of April is also observed as International Paintings Day. All right. So do keep that in mind. And that is all for today's newspaper analysis. And I will see you tomorrow for the next. Thank you.